Scary true hide-and-seek horror stories. It was supposed to be a simple game of hide-and-seek, 5 friends, one abandoned farmhouse, and a night full of laughter. But when the counting stopped, something else started playing, and it never stopped. It all started on a cold Friday evening when the rain wouldn't stop tapping on the windows of an old countryside house, the kind that creaks when you breathe too loud, and smells faintly of dust, wood polish, and secrets. The Thompsons had invited a few neighborhood kids over for a sleepover, and like all kids with restless energy, they decided to play hide-and-seek, because what could go wrong in a big, dimly lit house with a basement no one liked to talk about? 12-year-old Ryan was the one who suggested it, his mischievous grin daring everyone to go along, and soon laughter echoed through the hallways as footsteps thudded and whispered giggles filled the air. When Emma, the quiet girl with big curious eyes, drew the short straw, she had to be the seeker. Everyone scattered, hearts pounding with that childish thrill of fear and fun, but something about that night felt off. The lights flickered just as Emma started counting, and though she tried to laugh it off, the air in the house seemed to grow heavier with every number. She could hear the others scrambling upstairs, doors creaking open and slamming shut. But a soft thump from below made her freeze mid-count. The basement. No one ever went there. The adults said it was too cluttered and unsafe. But the kids whispered about it during school lunches, about the man who used to live there before the Thompsons bought the place, a man who vanished without a trace. Some said his ghost still walked the shadows, searching for company. Emma shivered, brushed off the thought, and continued counting until she reached 20. "Ready or not, here I come," she called out, her voice echoing a bit too long in the empty hallway. One by one, she checked the obvious spots, the linen closet under the dining table, behind the curtains. But everyone had gotten smarter since last time. Still, she couldn't shake the strange tug in her chest, pulling her toward the basement door, which stood slightly ajar at the end of the hall, whispering an invitation she didn't want to accept. She almost turned away, but then she heard it again, a faint giggle, the unmistakable sound of someone hiding just out of sight. "Very funny, Ryan," she muttered, forcing a smirk, trying to mask the unease twisting her stomach. She grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen counter, took a deep breath, and crept down the stairs, each step groaning like an old man's sigh. The air grew colder the deeper she went, and the smell, stale, metallic, and wet, made her nose wrinkle. When she reached the bottom, she swept her flashlight around the room. Boxes, old furniture draped in white sheets, cobwebs hanging like torn curtains. Nothing unusual except the far corner where something seemed to move. She blinked, steadying the trembling light beam, and saw a boy's shoulder peeking from behind an old wardrobe. "Gotcha," she said, grinning in relief, stepping forward, but the figure didn't move. It just stayed there, perfectly still. "Ryan?" she whispered. Silence. The beam of her flashlight flickered once, twice, and when it steadied again, the shoulder was gone. The space behind the wardrobe was empty. Her heart thudded painfully. "Okay, you're being weird," she said out loud, more to herself than anyone else. She turned to leave, but the basement door at the top of the stairs creaked and shut with a hollow slam that echoed through the dark. Her flashlight flickered again, and for a split second she thought she saw something. Someone, standing on the other side of the room. A figure, tall, motionless, its head tilted slightly to one side like it was curious. She froze, unable to breathe, her pulse pounding in her ears so loud it drowned out everything else. "Who's there?" she croaked. No answer. Just the slow, dragging sound of feet on the concrete floor. She stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. It rolled, spinning its weak beam across the walls before stopping on something scratched into the concrete near her shoes. "Let's play again." Her breath hitched as cold fingers brushed the back of her neck. She screamed and bolted up the stairs, pounding her fists against the door until someone finally opened it from the other side. It was Ryan, his eyes wide. "Emma, where were you? We've been looking for you for like 20 minutes. She turned, pointing toward the basement, but the door behind her was open again. The light she'd left on down there completely gone. She wanted to speak, to tell them what she saw, but her voice failed her. The others laughed it off as her imagination, but when she looked at Ryan, something caught her attention. Dust smudges on his shirt, and a faint red line across his cheek, as if something had clawed him. "What happened to your face?" she asked. He blinked, confused. "What?" "Oh, nothing. I tripped while hiding. You didn't find me, though." He grinned, but Emma didn't smile back. because she'd seen his hiding spot upstairs behind the curtains in the living room when she first started searching. He wasn't the one in the basement. Later that night, after everyone had fallen asleep, Emma lay awake in her sleeping bag staring at the ceiling. The rain had stopped, but the faint sound of dripping water echoed through the vents, steady and rhythmic. Then just as she was about to drift off, she heard it again, 3 soft knocks. Coming from the basement door. Her chest tightened. She waited, holding her breath. Another 3 knocks, a little louder this time, followed by a whisper. It was her name. Faint, drawn out like a sigh. She sat up, heart racing, and glanced at the other kids. They were fast asleep. She swallowed hard, trying to convince herself it was just her mind playing tricks. But curiosity, dangerous, familiar curiosity, pushed her to her feet. She crept toward the hallway, every floorboard moaning beneath her weight until she reached the door. It stood slightly open again, just like before. The air spilling from the gap was freezing cold. "Who's there?" she whispered. But the only answer was her own breath bouncing back. Then something slid out from the darkness, a small marble rolling across the floor, stopping by her foot. She picked it up with shaking fingers. It was cloudy, cracked, and warm. Too warm. She dropped it, her stomach twisting, and backed away. The whisper came again, closer now. "Your turn to hide." That's when she screamed, waking everyone in the house. The adults came rushing, flipping lights, searching every corner, but found nothing. The basement was empty. No footprints, no writing on the floor, no sign of anyone else. The kids went home early the next morning, none of them eager to talk about what happened. But something about that night never left Emma. Weeks later, she'd wake up with the same whisper in her ear, the same 3 knocks echoing from somewhere below her bed. Her parents said it was nightmares. Maybe it was, until the day she disappeared. They found the basement door open again, the flashlight she'd used lying at the bottom of the stairs, its light still weakly flickering. On the wall, faint but unmistakable, were words scratched into the concrete, "Your turn." The Thompsons moved out soon after. The house stood empty for years, though locals said they'd sometimes see the basement light turn on at night, even when no one lived there. Some swore they heard laughter echoing through the trees, the kind that starts out innocent but ends sounding wrong. A new family eventually moved in, bringing with them 2 kids about Emma's age. On their first night during a thunderstorm, the younger one found an old marble rolling out from under the basement door. The parents said it was just a toy left behind. But that night, while the family slept, the basement door slowly opened on its own, hinges crying out after years of silence, and a faint voice whispered up the stairs, as if it had been waiting all along. "Ready or not?" It was supposed to be just another quiet summer evening in the small town of Willow Creek, where the air always smelled faintly of cut grass and rain-soaked soil, and nothing bad ever really happened. At least that's what people like to believe. 12-year-old Lucy had moved into her new house only a week ago. A creaky old Victorian with peeling paint, tall windows, and long red curtains that danced every time the wind slipped through the cracks. Her parents were still unpacking boxes, arguing softly about where to put the old clock that hadn't worked in years, while Lucy explored the empty rooms with her flashlight and her endless curiosity. The house had character, her mom said, which usually meant it was ancient and full of noises that made you think twice about being alone. That night, when the sky turned a bruised purple and the wind began to whisper through the trees, Lucy decided to play hide-and-seek with her cousin Ben, who'd come over to help her test the new place. The rules were simple. No going outside, no hiding in the attic, and no cheating. Ben, always the brave one, grinned and said, "I'll count. You hide." Lucy nodded and darted away before he could even start counting. She ran upstairs, her socks sliding across the dusty wooden floor, giggling under her breath. Most of the rooms were still bare, just a few boxes and some old furniture covered with sheets. But she wanted a spot that would really fool him. Then she saw it. The tall red curtain in her parents' room, hanging just beside the window that overlooked the backyard. It brushed against the floor, thick enough to hide behind completely. "Perfect," she whispered, slipping between the curtain and the wall, careful not to move it too much. The fabric smelled faintly of damp and something else, something metallic like rust or old pennies. She told herself it was just the smell of the old house. From where she stood, she could see a sliver of the room through the gap in the curtain. Ben's muffled voice echoed from the hallway. "Ready or not, here I come." and Lucy stifled a laugh, holding her breath. The floorboards groaned as he moved from room to room, calling her name. Then suddenly he went quiet. She frowned. He wasn't in the hallway anymore. The house seemed to hold its breath too. That's when she felt it, a soft, cold exhale brushing the back of her neck. Her entire body froze. For a moment she thought it was just the wind sneaking in through the window, but then she realized the window beside her was shut tight. She tried to convince herself she was imagining things, that Ben had snuck in to scare her. Slowly, she turned her head just enough to glance over her shoulder. The space behind her was dark, but in that darkness she saw something pale, like the outline of a face. Two faint shapes, eyes that didn't blink, staring straight at her through the folds of the curtain. Lucy's breath caught in her throat. "Ben?" she whispered. No answer. The air turned colder, thick enough that she could see her breath fogging in front of her face. She wanted to move, to run, but her body wouldn't listen. The curtain fluttered slightly, as though someone inside it had shifted their weight. Then in a voice that wasn't Ben's, she heard a whisper, "You found me." Lucy screamed and stumbled backward, yanking the curtain aside, but there was no one there. Just the empty space, the window, and her own reflection trembling in the glass. Footsteps thundered up the stairs as Ben burst into the room, his face pale. "What happened?" he gasped. Lucy pointed at the curtain, her words tripping over each other. "There was someone behind it. Someone was there." Ben stared, confused. He yanked the curtain open again, slapped the wall behind it, checked the window latch. Nothing. "No one's here, Luce. Maybe you saw your reflection or something." She wanted to believe him, she really did. But she couldn't forget that breath on her neck or the voice that said those words. That night she refused to sleep in that room. Her parents laughed softly, thinking she was just spooked from all the moving stress, so she stayed in Ben's room instead, sleeping on a mattress on the floor. But sometime after midnight the sound came again. A slow dragging noise, like fabric brushing the floor. Ben stirred. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Lucy nodded, clutching the blanket. The noise grew louder, moving down the hallway toward them. They both stared at the door, which was slightly open. The hallway light flickered once, then went out completely. In the darkness, a shadow appeared behind the crack of the door. Tall, narrow, unmoving. Ben's breath hitched. "Dad?" he called out, but the figure didn't respond. It just stood there for a moment, then slowly turned away. The curtain sound followed it, like something dragging across the floor. They didn't sleep after that. The next morning, when their parents checked the house, they found the red curtain had fallen to the floor. The metal rod was bent as though pulled down by force. When Lucy picked it up, her hands came away smeared with something dark and sticky. "Probably rust," her dad said quickly, taking it from her. But Lucy knew what she saw. Those weren't rust stains. They were fingerprints. Small child-sized fingerprints. That day she told Ben she never wanted to play hide and seek again, especially not near that curtain. But as days passed, strange things began happening. Her toys would be moved when she wasn't in the room. The window would be open in the morning even though her parents swore they kept it locked. And sometimes when she passed the mirror near the stairs, she'd catch a glimpse of a pale boy standing behind her for just a split second before vanishing. Ben stopped coming over after he woke up one night to see that same boy standing at the foot of his sleeping bag, tilting his head with an almost curious expression. His parents found him outside on the porch the next morning, crying and refusing to go back in. Lucy tried telling her parents, but they brushed it off as imagination. "New house jitters," her mom said. But Lucy wasn't imagining it. She could hear him at night, footsteps pacing softly in her parents' room where the curtain used to hang, the sound of something dragging, and every so often, a soft whisper calling her name. Once, when she gathered the courage to peek into that room again, she noticed something on the wall near the window. Tiny scratch marks, like fingernails, had clawed through the paint. And above them, written faintly in the dust, was the word hide. Weeks later, an old neighbor came by with a pie to welcome the family. She was a wrinkled woman with trembling hands and kind eyes that dimmed when she heard which room Lucy slept in. "The one with the big window and red curtains?" she asked. Her mother nodded. The old woman pursed her lips and muttered something under her breath. "You might want to keep that window shut at night," she said finally. "My nephew used to live here. Disappeared when he was about your daughter's age. They said he went missing playing hide and seek. Police never found him. Some folks said he ran away, but..." She trailed off, her eyes distant. He used to love hiding behind that curtain. Lucy's mother laughed nervously, thinking it was just a sad old story. But Lucy felt her skin crawl. She wanted to ask more, but her mother quickly changed the subject. That night, Lucy dreamed of the curtain swaying gently in the dark, and a pale hand reaching out from beneath it. A few days later, her parents went out for dinner, leaving Lucy home with a babysitter, a college girl who spent most of the night scrolling her phone. Lucy tried to stay in the living room, but around 9 o'clock she heard a familiar sound coming from upstairs, the faint rustle of fabric. Her blood ran cold. "He's back," she whispered. The babysitter barely looked up. "Who's back?" "The boy," Lucy said, voice trembling. "The boy behind the curtain." The girl sighed, putting her phone down. "Okay, that's enough ghost stories for tonight." But when she went upstairs to prove nothing was there, Lucy followed a few steps behind. The door to her parents' room was wide open. The moonlight through the window painted everything silver. And there it was, the curtain, hung back up, slowly swaying even though the air was still. The babysitter frowned. "Guess your dad rehung it." She stepped closer, reaching out to touch the fabric. "See, nothing." Her sentence broke off into a scream. The curtain jerked violently as though someone had yanked her inside. The light bulb overhead exploded, showering sparks, and Lucy screamed as the babysitter stumbled backward, her arm scratched and bleeding. What was that?" she gasped, clutching her arm. But when Lucy looked again, the curtain was still, perfectly still, like nothing had happened. The babysitter refused to stay after that. Lucy's parents thought it was nonsense until they saw the scratches themselves, long, thin, and deep. They moved out within the month, leaving the house locked and empty. But neighbors say it doesn't stay quiet for long. Sometimes late at night when the wind picks up, they swear they see the curtain move even though the windows are closed. Some have heard a child's laughter drifting from the empty upstairs room. And on rainy nights, if you look close enough through the glass, you might see him, the boy behind the curtain, watching, waiting, for someone new to play hide and seek. It happened on a warm summer evening, the kind of night when cicadas hummed lazily in the trees and the air hung thick with the scent of grass and gasoline from the nearby road. A group of 5 friends, Mia, Tyler, Jordan, Hannah, and Sam, had gathered at the old Miller property, an abandoned farmhouse just outside town. Everyone knew the place was off limits. The roof sagged in the middle, the paint peeled like old skin, and the weeds grew tall enough to hide a person whole, but that's exactly why they loved it. It was the perfect place for one last game of hide-and-seek before high school ended, and they all went their separate ways. The sun was already dipping low, bleeding orange across the sky when Tyler grinned and said, "Let's make it interesting.
Lights out, no phones."
1 round. Winner gets bragging rights forever." The others groaned but agreed because pride had a strange way of pushing people toward bad decisions. They'd played there before years ago when they were kids, but never after dark. The locals said the house wasn't just old, it was cursed, that people who played games inside it didn't always come back. Of course, no one believed that. Not really. Not until that night. Hannah was chosen to seek first. She covered her eyes and began to count slowly from 30 while the others scattered, their footsteps crunching on gravel and echoing through the hollow rooms. Mia darted toward the back of the house where the barn once stood, its roof collapsed inward like a broken jaw. She hesitated at the doorway. The shadows inside were thick, swallowing the last of the daylight. "Just 1 round," she whispered to herself, forcing a nervous laugh. She stepped inside, brushing aside a curtain of cobwebs. The smell hit her first, damp hay, mold, and something faintly metallic like dried blood. She wrinkled her nose, scanning the barn with the fading light from the cracked window. A ladder leaned against the far wall, leading to the hayloft above. Perfect hiding spot. She climbed it quickly, her palms slick with sweat, and crouched down between the old bales of straw. Dust swirled in the air, catching the last bit of sunlight like floating ash. She could hear Hannah's voice outside calling out numbers. 29, 30. "Ready or not, here I come," followed by laughter and the scuffle of shoes. The game began. Hannah's footsteps echoed faintly as she searched the farmhouse first. Mia could hear Tyler whisper, laughing somewhere near the porch, the floorboards creaking under his weight. Everything felt normal, almost fun. But then as she shifted to get more comfortable, she heard something, a soft rustle beneath her, like someone dragging their hand through straw. She froze, Probably a rat, she thought. The place was full of them. But then she heard it again, louder this time, closer. She held her breath, straining to listen. The sound stopped. Silence stretched so long it made her ears ring. Then, from directly below the loft came a faint, drawn-out whisper. "Mia!" Her heart lurched. It was Hannah, had to be. "Not funny," she whispered back, peering down through the gap in the boards. Nothing. Just darkness. "Seriously, stop it," she hissed. No answer. The air suddenly felt colder, heavy in her lungs. She waited another few seconds before exhaling shakily. "Okay, I'm imagining things," she muttered, more to convince herself than anything. But she wasn't imagining what happened next. Something moved below, slowly, deliberately. The straw shifted as if someone or something was crawling through it. She leaned forward, trying to see better, but the wood beneath her creaked loudly. The movement stopped. Then came a sound that made her blood run cold, a low, breathy laugh. It wasn't Hannah's, it wasn't any of her friends. It sounded wrong, like a voice stretched too thin, too deep. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. The laugh came again, this time closer, followed by the faint scrape of nails on wood. Panic surged through her chest. She climbed down the ladder fast, nearly slipping on the last rung, and bolted out of the barn. The night had deepened, stars barely visible behind the haze of clouds. The others were nowhere to be seen. "Guys?" she shouted. No answer. The field around the farmhouse was silent except for the wind sighing through the tall grass. She headed toward the porch, her flashlight long forgotten in her backpack. "Hannah, Tyler!" she called again, louder this time. That's when she saw it. The faint silhouette of someone standing in the upstairs window of the farmhouse. At first, she thought it was one of her friends, maybe Jordan trying to spook her. But the figure didn't move. It just stood there, motionless, head slightly tilted, watching. "Not funny," she yelled. Still no reaction. Then as lightning flashed across the sky, she saw the face clearly for just a heartbeat, and her stomach twisted. The figure wasn't anyone she knew. Its skin looked pale, almost gray, and its mouth was wide open like it was screaming silently. She stumbled backward, heart pounding, and turned to run. But Hannah appeared suddenly from the side of the house, panting. "Where were you?" she gasped. "I've been looking everywhere. Tyler and Sam are gone. They were supposed to hide in the kitchen, but they're not there." Mia grabbed her arm. "We need to leave. Now." But before Hannah could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed from inside the house. Heavy, dragging footsteps moving slowly down the hallway. Both girls froze. "Tyler?" Hannah called. The footsteps stopped. Then came 3 slow knocks against the inside of the wall. 1, 2, 3. The same rhythm repeated, louder each time. The girls backed away as the front door creaked open on its own, the hinges screaming in protest. Cold air spilled out, carrying the smell of rot and something else, something sweet and foul like old decay. Hannah's breathing turned ragged. "This isn't funny anymore," she whispered. "I know," Mia said, her voice barely audible. But a part of her couldn't help it. She looked back toward the doorway. And there, half hidden in the shadows, was the same figure from the window. Its eyes were hollow pits, its jaw slightly unhinged, and as it stepped forward it whispered in that same drawn-out voice, "Hide." They ran. Through the field, over the ditch, down the gravel road, until the farmhouse was nothing but a dark smudge against the horizon. When they finally stopped, gasping for air, they realized Sam and Tyler still hadn't come out. Jordan appeared from behind a tree, pale and shaking. "I saw something," he said, voice cracking. "In the kitchen." It wasn't them. It looked like someone else was playing. The 3 of them didn't go back that night. They went straight to town, pounding on the sheriff's door until he came out in his robe, annoyed and half asleep. But when the deputies searched the property the next morning, there was no sign of Tyler or Sam, just their shoes, neatly placed near the barn door, and a handprint burned into the wood, blackened, like someone had pressed it there with fire. The police wrote it off as a runaway case. No one believed the story about the figure or the whisper or the sound of footsteps in the walls. Years passed. The farmhouse was torn down, the land sold off to a developer who planned to build a new subdivision. But construction never finished. Workers complained of hearing voices at night, of tools moving on their own, of children laughing in the empty fields. One by one they quit until the project was abandoned completely. Today only the barn remains, rotted, leaning, its roof caved in. Locals say if you go there after sunset and stand very still, You can still hear the faint echo of laughter, followed by a soft whisper drifting through the straw. Ready or not. They say sometimes if you listen closely enough, you'll hear footsteps circling you, slow, careful, playful, and if you run, the voice calls after you, almost gleeful, promising the game isn't over. Hide and never seek again, it whispers. Your turn to play.